Uh, Jeff, it's great. I was here on this stage yesterday, and so it's great to be back, and it's great to be back with you.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Doesn't it feel like 2026 has been like 6 months already? It's like,
It does. I was commenting to you that I'm still tired from 2025. I didn't have this in me.
I mean, it's what is today, January the 7th, and I'm tired from 2026. Like, my God. And by the way, I think that's a good sort of like thing to think about is for this year ahead. I think we're all going to need some sleep because it is going to be one hell of a year. And if we finish 2025 with a lot of change, a lot of tumult in the industry, in the economy, in the world, what stood out to you as like the biggest sort of change agent of 2025?
Well, 2025 was one of the biggest game changer years, I think, in the history of our space. I think, without a doubt, the single biggest story was Google and the Department of Justice had been found guilty of a monopoly. That has changed the landscape substantially. Of course, you can't talk about 2025 without talking about AI. So all the discussions around AI, but also just the amount of innovation, because 2024 was a year where we talked a lot about AI, but 2025 was a year where Wall Street and everybody else was looking for results. What's the tangible byproduct of all of our AI efforts? So to me, 2025 is marked mostly by those two things, but then there's also a lot of changes in the supply chain, a lot of pressures on the companies, partly because of AI, but a lot of pressures on the supply chain that make it so that companies had to adapt, change, evolve, grow in ways that I think many of them weren't ready for.
Well, you say AI. Where do you think we are on the paradigm of hype versus reality? Because you said Wall Street's looking for results. I think we've seen, in some cases, particularly the large companies, some amazing results of applying these AI tools. But I would say most of the companies are talking AI. I haven't really seen it manifest yet. And I have a thesis about this, and I want your opinion on it. We did this AI LUMAscape in November. We published it, and everyone and their sister was like trying to get, hey, put us on the LUMAscape. We have AI. We have AI. And it's a hard task to do to figure out who's got real tech. We decided to default to putting people on there, but then with a warning, a notice that if you have real AI, it ought to manifest in your financials in the form of higher revenue per FTE or faster growth or better margins. In other words, it ought to demonstrate operating leverage. And if you don't exhibit that in 2026, we're going to take you off. We're going to take you off. So we're going to call bullshit. 2026 is the year of Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. So who's doing it already and who's just talking about it?
Well, let me back up to your bigger question, which is like how much of this is hype and how much of this is reality. There's been a lot of comparisons to the .com boom and bust. There's also been a lot of analogies to the start of compute and really the advent of the processor and the computer. And I believe it's more akin to that. And there's a lot of discussion about what are the applications for this, and less about the actual applications. And what I mean by that is in the .com boom, there were lots of companies that got funded that were on the right track, but are here no more. And there are more AI companies that will be remembered as the Lycos and the Ask Jeeves and the Excites of the world than will be the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. But make no mistake, those companies are among us. Those companies are being born now. And we will see changes in society that are mostly around productivity. I know there's a lot of fear of the robots taking over, but all of those have, of course, you don't keep your books by hand anymore. The computer does that. Of course, there's been so many things that have come in terms of productivity from all of those changes. And I think we're going to see the same thing from AI. I don't think there's a space that will benefit from it more than the advertising side.
I agree with that. You know, we didn't talk about this, but there's a debate as to how this is going to manifest. I stood on stage here yesterday and said AI was made for advertising and advertising was made for AI. But the question remains, are we going to have a world of winner take most or winner take all, where the LLMs vertically integrate and sort of manage the whole answers economy thing? I won't tell you what my view is. I'm going to ask you, well, how far vertically integrated do you think the LLMs get, or do they just stay where they are as platforms and operate like an app store kind of thing, getting a big from everybody who builds applications in last miles?
Well, because this is a productivity enhancer. I mean, you're already seeing this with the way that people code. Like, it is so much easier to code now in an AI world than it was before, and it gets rid of the really shitty parts of coding where machines can do that. So I believe that creates way more innovation than we had before. And the notion that any one company would do all the innovation in a world where it is easier to innovate than ever is utterly ridiculous. Now, on the winner take all discussion, usually what we're talking about is the new era of search, where we're talking about LLMs that are like ChatGPT and Gemini and that competition. It's interesting. I've asked that question to literally trillions of dollars of money managers, and none of them have said winner take all. That instead, and the way I frame the question is this like the last chapter of search, where Google eventually had 91% market share in the English-speaking world? Will that be the same in this? And all of them, I don't know that I've heard a person yet say, yes, somebody will get 90%. Instead, they say, oh, it will be much more fragmented. I think that creates more competition. I think a lot of the problems that we had with Google and monopolies have really impaired innovation.
Right.
And so the fact that I think that will disrupt that, partly because we're making innovation easier, is a great thing for the market. It's a great thing for the world. We just all have to adapt, build, move quickly.
So, speaking of the walled gardens, you and I have had fascinating, continuous debates about walled gardens versus the open internet, and I guess, and obviously the trends have been bad, have been negative towards walled gardens. As we enter the age of AI, I want to ask, does it get better or worse for the open internet? And I think there's two opposing narratives I've heard. One is that agentic will kill the open web because the changing navigation that you referenced in terms of search, plus the massive capital advantage that big tech has. They can, I mean, I showed a stat here that 4 companies, Google, Amazon, Meta, and one other, we're spending $350 billion a year on AI. So they've got a massive capital advantage. So one scenario is AI actually makes it worse, and the big tech and the walled gardens that dominate even more. And then there's another narrative that says that AI tools will in fact democratize effectiveness for everybody else to enable the open web to better compete.
Yeah.
Which side would you take?
Well, so because AI creates productivity, in my view, there's no way that this doesn't end with a better ecosystem, where there's more competition and more productivity than what we have today, because we have these better tools.
Yep.
When people talk about AI destroying the open internet, what to me they're talking about is the fact that these, the Chat GPTs and Geminis of the world are largely consuming all the content of websites and then reciting that back to you in a more collected and articulate way. Like, I'm blown away by the type of questions that you can ask. Like, every day I'm just so impressed with the technology of both of those companies. But as we continue to innovate, to me, we'll come up with more applications for AI. We'll be able to do different things. And the biggest parts of the open internet are CTV, those are music, those are journalism, those are live sports. AI is not replacing those. And I think in an AI world, our desire, and we've seen this go up massively, if you just look at this from less of a technologist and more as a sociologist, you look at the ecosystem and say, when I say the ecosystem, society,
right?
You look at that and we have a greater desire for authenticity. We have a greater need for a human connection. Like, we're making a whole bunch of mistakes in society because we're underestimating how important those are for humans to be functional. And so, in a world where we value authenticity and truth, I mean, AI does have a serious problem, which is a garbage in, garbage out problem. So, our desire for truth, authenticity, connection is greater than it's ever been. This is part of the reason why we saw bidding wars for content at prices that are higher than they've ever been.
Right.
So the open internet is doing phenomenal when we look at what's happening in music, what's happening in movies, what's happening in television, what's happening in sports. Now, journalism's had a tough run because it's closer to the website sort of dilemma,
right,
where it's being consumed. But those things are not going away. They will be monetized more. There will be some pressure on website traffic. But for instance, in our case, where I think we're the biggest buyer of the open internet, 10-ish% is spent on websites themselves, and the rest are spent on destinations where people are looking to connect. That's not going anywhere. In fact, it will continue to get more and more of a premium.
So more and more premium, and yet marketers, it feels to me like marketers are just hitting the easy button and just spending more on Meta and Google because it works and they don't have to think about it. And the old expression, nobody got fired for buying IBM. Well, it feels like it's that way for the open internet. What are those marketers missing?
Well, so I probably had 50 conversations with CMOs in 2025, and there was one theme that came up again and again and again, and that is I need help explaining the open internet and especially the world of programmatic to the CFO and the CEO. And the complexity of our ecosystem operates or forces the ecosystem to operate somewhat at a disadvantage. And it is often the case that what ad tech does as a response to that is come up with something more complicated or more nuanced with more acronyms.
If only there was a chart.
Yeah, if only there was some sort of scape
Yeah, exactly.
to make this clear for everyone. Yeah,
Okay. So okay. So, but again, back to the heart of what are they missing? What opportunities to bring? Like, if you've got a big pitch, and you're meeting with the CMO of some Fortune 20 brand, and they ask the question, Jeff, why should I spend money on the trade desk and the open internet because this easy button spend on Meta seems to be working for me? What's the primary reason why I should do that?
Well, so what's happening a lot in our space right now is companies are fighting for credit for your growth instead of fighting to help you grow. And cheap reach and walled gardens are the best at that.
Yep.
They are taking credit for the growth that you would have had.
And last click.
Because of last click and last touch. Like, you don't build brands on black and blue characters. You build brands on moving picture and sound. You make people feel something.
Yep.
That's where our memories are rooted. That's where brands are built. There's a lot of time and money and effort that goes into that, and it's very complicated, and it takes years to make somebody want to buy your car. And that brand building is something that is very difficult to measure. They have made it easy. And for the CEO and CFO that are just looking for a sure thing, they have created an easy metric for them to say yes to. But it has not actually fueled their growth. And if you look at the top 60 brands and see those that have outpaced GDP growth,
Yep.
and those that have not typically are have offline conversions.
Right.
And it's all in correlation to how they think about building brands, in my view, and the way that they measure that and they invest in the future.
Okay. I want to talk about the ecosystem. You mentioned supply chain earlier. So I've described advertising technology, the sector, as the Peter Pan of industries. It refuses to grow up in the sense that, most industries go through an arc of, new company formation. You get sort of peak fragmentation, and then you get natural rationalization, consolidation. Most industries, airlines, software, rationalized down to half a dozen to a dozen players, so still competition, but like not mass fragmentation. I've also argued that we need rationalization consolidation in this industry because this continued fragmentation creates dark corners, and bad things happen in dark corners. Everything from shenanigans, which are like primarily good companies just trying to make their quarter and doing some things that maybe net not cool, or all the way through to outright fraud. So you bought Sincera last year, and that gave you a unique look-see into the dark corners. What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, there's another dynamic that I think a lot of people are not aware of, and that is that there is way more supply than there is demand in advertising. And in 2025, we actually created more supply than I think any year in the history of digital advertising. And with that incremental supply, and when there is a dramatic supply-demand imbalance, you are really fighting to sell your inventory and try to find some way to get people to buy it. And it's understandable that some will resort rather to tricks.
Right.
How can I trick somebody into buying it? If I tell them exactly what it is, they won't buy it because there's double-digit more supply than there is demand.
Yep.
So what we've spent a lot of time doing is trying to get, especially the premium side of the internet, to describe what they're selling well. So that we give buyers the very best chance to buy the good stuff and to buy the stuff that really creates results and builds brands and associates them with the most premium content in the world. And that, in part, because when you are premium, you do want to differentiate yourself. How do we make it really stand out? And we're seeing a lot of change in that. Of course, they're typically bigger companies, so they move a little slower. But that desire for them to describe more clearly what they're selling is greater than it's ever been. And to me, that bodes very well for the future of the open internet.
And where do you see the push and shove around players, demand side, supply side? You guys launched Open Ads, which sort of moves you for the purpose of better SBO into supply with a sort of like a patina of premium on it to try and, presumably, I'm going to put words in your mouth, like rid this notion of reselling crap and all this kind of stuff to stick with the premium. There's been pushback from the supply side saying, hey, get out of our corner, this kind of stuff. Where do you see the push and pull between demand and supply with actually some of the partners that you've built the business with for the last 15 years?
Yeah, so I don't look at it as us getting into supply. I don't look at it through the paradigm that you're describing, get out of our space or anything like that. If you believe that the auction is inherently a sell-side function, then you can argue that we are in the sell side. I don't think that's the case. I look at this more like there's defense, there's offense, there's a referee. The auction is more the referee. Or there's prosecution, there's defense attorney, there's judge. The auction is more the judge. You want it to be repeatable, you want it to be basic, and you want all the intelligence to live on the edges, like it does in equities markets.
Right.
Where in the middle, it's a repeatable process that we do millions and billions of times a day. And on the edges is where all the intelligence lives, and that's where the asymmetric advantage can live for a buyer or seller, and that's why equities markets, in my view, are one of the greatest wealth creators in the history of the world, not the greatest. To me, we are interested in having a healthy ecosystem. And at a moment where there's more supply than demand, there's an incentive for the sell side to corrupt the auction if we just leave it to them. And so we just want to make certain that there is an auction with integrity. I definitely do not want to be the only auction in the ecosystem. That is a burden I don't want to carry. I believe that is part of what got Google in trouble. I'm not running into the building that is on fire, in my view. So instead, and I've said this to SSPs this week, I want to see them do well.
Yeah.
But I refuse to...
Hey, say that again.
I want to see SSPs do well. The ecosystem needs them to do well.
Yeah, I agree.
But we also need an ecosystem where the supply chain is efficient and honest so that the open internet can compete with walled gardens.
Yeah.
And if we become the place of more shenanigans, then, or I sometimes say fuckery,
Fuckery.
then we will have an anemic ecosystem like I believe we have for the last 15 years. I'm super proud of the fact that we've managed to grow faster than the ecosystem for 15 years in an ecosystem that is anemic. But as I'm saying all the time, both internally and externally, imagine what we could do in an ecosystem that is healthy. All we need to do that is continue to improve the supply chains, and especially if you're in the power position, which is the buy side at this moment, then all you have to do is be really immovable on quality and cleaning up the ecosystem, and that's all we're trying to do. But I want to see SSPs do well, and I believe they will.
And I want to see them rationalize and consolidate. So I think we got that in common.
I think those two things have to go together.
Right? I think so. So you mentioned growth. The normal arc for companies is to grow organically, and then the law of large numbers takes over when they get into the billions of dollars, and their growth rate declines. And then frequently they use M&A to sort of augment their growth. It's code for M&A is inorganic growth. I love that expression because it focuses on growth. Now you've stood out as different from that sort of normal arc in two respects. Number one, and to your great credit, you have actually defied the law of large numbers, and over time, as you got bigger, your growth rate increased, which amazed everyone in the industry and kept your valuation at very sort of differentiated levels. And then secondly, you have largely eschewed large-scale M&A. I would actually argue that your two small deals, AdBrain and Sincera, have actually added a lot of value. You're actually better at M&A than perhaps you claim credit for. But your growth rate is now sort of went from sort of mid-20s. It's now into the teens. What strategies, organic or inorganic, do you think you need to do to sort of keep growth? Because I think the focus should be on growing the business. And if it is inorganic, if I finally converted you, Jeff, because I've tried, right? I've so tried.
Yes, you have.
What directions would logically make sense for you?
Yeah. So, well, let's first start by just talking about growth in general. So, I've been talking about this really since the time we went public, which this year we'll celebrate our 10-year anniversary as a public company. Thank you.
Woo!
We've been public longer than we were private. We've been around for 16 years. In those 10 years, we beat and raised for 8.5 years straight. I think that is probably a record. And we've had just an unbelievable run as a publicly traded company, and we continue to be more optimistic about our future than ever. I spent 2025 really doing a lot of internal remodeling to help us grow again in the future. And we're confident that in the future, we'll accelerate our growth. So we're very excited about what the future holds. We think AI has tons of opportunity for us. We think we can be one of the greatest beneficiaries of AI in the tech world. And of course, we are pointed at $1 trillion TAM. And that $1 trillion TAM, when you control 10 plus billion, I mean, we control 1-2% of the ecosystem.
Right.
There is so much TAM to unlock. And I've just constantly looked at it and said, is our core business able to unlock that? And it is. And so I don't want to get distracted. And it's also very hard for us to acquire companies that are accretive in both growth and then also scale. You don't want to make it so that your number 10 priority becomes your number 2 priority simply because you just bought it. That said, I fundamentally believe that there are a ton of great companies there. And Sincera is a great sort of case study in this, in that we buy a company, it changes our paradigm a little bit. We get some new data and insight that helps us go faster. AdBrain did exactly the same thing. It helped us accelerate our core mission. I'm confident that there are more of those companies out there than there have ever been before. And so I do expect us to get more acquisitive as time goes on, but I will never let our number 10 priority become our number 2. I'm also never going to be one of those companies that acquires for the headline and then maybe it'll work and you're satisfied with a 10% successful integration rate the way many of big tech has been, I will never do that because I think it puts at risk the core business, and our opportunity is too big for us to get distracted.
Well, definitely. I mean, you know me. I'll make the case for how M&A can create a lot of value as well as organic. But we'll have that continuing discussion.
Sounds good.
So last night I was at a dinner with 3CV and Michael Casson had an incredible artist, a mentalist by the name of Lior Suchard. Incredible talent. This guy, thank you very much. He asked in his last sort of session, he asked Michael, who's the most skeptical person you know in this room? And I turned to my table mates and I said, oh shit, here it comes. And he said, me. And so I spent 10 minutes on stage with this mentalist. He guessed everything I thought of. Dice 5 times, everything to do with my age. Oh my God. He was, thank you. And in that theme, in that tone, keeping with this sort of mentalist, you, sir, were rightly predicted that Google would not, in fact, deprecate the cookie when they announced it in February 2020. You were the only one, I think, that said, I don't buy it, it's bullshit. And you were right. So you're kind of like Lior Suchard.
63.
Okay. What are you predicting will happen? What do you see coming in 2026? Short answer, they want us off the stage.
Okay, the short answer is 2026 will be the best year yet for the open internet, largely because of what AI will bring, as well as the fact that you'll see the premium side of the internet be the grounding for the first dollar that's spent for more and more brands. So right now, the walled gardens tend to get the first dollar for most of those, and you'll start to see a trend of the first dollar going more towards the open internet because that's where premium and real impact takes place, and that will largely be because of the changes in measurement that happen for the open internet, which has been sort of the missing piece, which I think is going to be the theme of 2026.
All right, take that, Judge Brinkaba. And now we're going to do something very unusual. Just give me 30 more seconds. Come on over here, Jeff. That we're going to film a line of the parody video. So your line is of a runway moderator stream, okay? Of a runway moderator stream. And this is like, you're witnessing history here. It's actually the second time I've done this live.
He told me we were doing this over there.
Yeah, I know. So it's of a runway moderator stream. Oh, and if you want to point at me, you can put your thing down.
Okay.
We're not the other. And it will go 3, 2, 1.
Of a runaway moderator stream.
And that's a cut! Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Green!